Here's business then. We're kicking off with the Eurozone once again. It's the most important business story, that's why. It seems Portuguese protesters, they've won a concession from their government. New angle, though.
Yeah, a bit of a chink in the wall of Eurozone austerity, actually, because, of course, austerity measures have been put in place across the region, and now it looks like a bit of a fallback, a bit of a U-turn, at least, from the Portuguese government. Social security tax was due to go up from 11 to 18%. Quite a hike there, but there were massive protests, as you can see, just last weekend. And then this Saturday, the government had an emergency meeting, went on for 8 hours late into the night, and they eventually decided to scrap that plan. That will, of course, make it even more difficult for them to go ahead with further cuts, because they do still plan to keep committed to that EU and IMF bailout that they have.
OK, another potential change here, because here in France, the Prime Minister's been calling for Greece to be given more time on its bailout deal.
Yeah, and this is the clearest indication yet that this is what France wants to see. It's been voiced before, but this is the Prime Minister saying that Greece should be given more time as long as it is serious about putting in place its reforms. He did, of course, give a stark warning to all those who say that Athens should just be allowed to leave the Eurozone now that the time is up, they've had enough. He said that that would be unmanageable and that it could be the beginning of the end of the European project. That is seen as a message to many of those more in Northern Europe, Germany in particular, who are saying that Greece should now be allowed to leave the Eurozone and that the Eurozone could carry on without it.
So quite a lot of distance there between the French and German positions, aren't there? I mean, there has been, though, a bit of a show of unity between the two nations at the weekend.
Absolutely, yeah. And this was the anniversary, the 50th anniversary of a famous speech made by Charles de Gaulle in the wake of the Second World War, really seen as building bridges back again with Germany in the wake of that conflict. And while there was a show of unity at the weekend between François Hollande and Angela Merkel, there are still points that they don't quite see eye to eye on.
The Eurozone crisis has brought up doomsaying talk about a possible breakup of the Eurozone, but for the EU's two biggest economies, that's the wrong way out. Meeting in Germany, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President François Hollande agreed the only way forward is further economic and political integration. As one step towards that, France wants to introduce a European banking union, meaning all Eurozone banks would be supervised by the European Central Bank rather than their domestic central banks.
What's urgent is to create growth conditions, to better control financial markets, to reinforce the Eurozone, to install a new European control system, and that is what we're working on, France and Germany.
Hollande is calling for a banking union agreement as soon as possible. He sees it happening by the end of the year. But that's where France and Germany's united front breaks down. While Merkel is open to the idea, she sounded a note of caution about rushing into an agreement.
There's no point in doing something quickly if it doesn't work. For me, it's important. And I think we agree on this, that the quality must be ensured.
It's not just the speed of the plan that's in question. German Finance Minister Wolfgang Schäuble has warned it would be impossible for the ECB to monitor all 6,000 Eurozone banks. Germany wants only institutions that operate across borders, as well as those that are judged essential to the Eurozone economy, to come under ECB oversight.
Another item on the agenda there, the proposed merger of defence giants BAE Systems and EADS. Any movement on that front?
Well, it was discussed at the weekend by the two leaders. They said no agreement was reached. In fact, it has been made even more complicated, really, if you think about it, according to a report in the Financial Times, because, of course, the UK, France, Germany, all of these countries are involved in these companies. They have decisive stakes in them. And the US is involved to an extent as well. In fact, they have a special agreement, as it were, a special arrangement with BAE Systems, which means that they are allowed to make sensitive US projects such as the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, very high technology, very sensitive for the US military. But EADS doesn't have, as it were, quite such high-level clearance. So the latest worry on this merger is if BAE Systems goes ahead with it, will they lose that high-level clearance? And if so, it sounds like they wouldn't be too keen to do that. We'll know on October the 10th if this merger is going to go ahead, but there are a number of different issues with this, including that latest one with the US being involved.
OK, let's zip over the other side of the world to Asia now. Toyota is starting production again in China. This is after the protest last week, isn't it?
That's right, yeah, with those protests, which saw Japanese businesses attacked from restaurants to car showrooms, and indeed cars themselves, if they were just made by a Japanese company, even if they're owned by Chinese people, they were set on fire in some cases. This was after Japan bought contested islands in the East China Sea, which both countries claim. Toyota and other major manufacturers are now starting up production again this Monday, although there is an anniversary on Thursday of the normalisation of ties between the two countries. This could be another focus of protests.
OK, what about the markets? How are they looking today?
Well, let's take a look at Europe, and I'm afraid it's not a great start to the week. The major markets in Europe are all facing downwards at the open of play. Worries about global growth. Let's have a look at how things are closing in Asia as well, because it's been a similar story there. Europe following on from the Asian markets. The Shanghai Composite and the Kospi managing to just about get into growth. I should mention Foxconn, the company that makes Apple iPhones. They're down around 3% after disturbances, after apparently fights broke out amongst workers at one of their factories in northern China. It's not known what the fight was about, but it involved up to 2,000 workers and 40 have been hospitalised, apparently.
Ooh, interesting. OK, fine. See if you can find out what it was about. We want to report that too. OK, staying in Asia, China's shipbuilders. They're already feeling the effect of the latest global slowdown. This bellwether industry seen its orders now drop by 50% in the last year.
Just 3 years ago, this shipyard in Zhejiang province hummed with activity. But the golden days of China's shipbuilding industry passed quickly. Compared to the same period in 2010, orders for the first 8 months of this year are down almost 50%.
In the most prosperous period, we had more than 2,500 people at work. Back then, you would see workers and construction vehicles everywhere.
Civilian shipbuilding exploded in China between 2006 and 2008. It helped the country to temporarily overtake South Korea as the world's #1 shipbuilder. But the financial crisis hit hard. With hundreds of shipyards facing bankruptcy, vessels are going at knockdown prices. Even so, there are few takers.
Because the world economy as a whole is not good, the shipbuilding industry is experiencing a downturn. We had received some interest, but no one really showed up for the liquidation auction.
There is hope for the industry in the domestic market. Much of China's merchant fleet comprises highly polluting and dangerous older ships. The country's remaining shipbuilders could benefit as these aged vessels are scrapped and replaced.
Yeah, latest there from China. Now, finally in the business, Facebook continuing to tread a fine line with its user data. What's the latest in this ongoing story, Will?
Well, Facebook, of course, especially since it launched on the stock market, more keen than ever to monetize its user information, basically details of people like you and me, as much as possible. It's admitted now it is working with a company called Datalogix. They run loyalty card schemes at various different stores across the US, and by teaming up with Facebook, they're able to put 2 and 2 together from the information on their loyalty cards and the information on people's profiles on Facebook. They can work out and link them together, and from that, they can see if someone's had a certain product advertised to them on Facebook. They can see if they go out and then buy that product. So it's a way of finding out how effective those adverts are on Facebook. I don't know if you've ever clicked on one. I've never met a person who has, but apparently some people do. And this is, like you say, some people say, slightly sneaky way of finding out how effective those adverts are. So consumer groups slightly worried, but Facebook trying to monetize its users as much as possible.
You never know who's watching. You never know who. Be careful what you do on a computer. It's very important. Well, thank you very much. Will with the business. More from him, of course, tomorrow morning. And Claire will be here very shortly. She'll have the latest after the weather. Stay with us.